Hi, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Academic Senate at Santa Barbara City College to order. Today is February 23rd. The time is now 3:09 p.m. Highlighting our Academic Senate community values is always a place where I start off our meeting. And today I'd like to acknowledge number 8. No, I'd like to acknowledge number 7. Number 7 reads, be mindful that each of us represent our division, but we also represent the faculty body as a whole. In our conversations and decisions, we will strive to represent our divisions while also being committed to the faculty body as a whole. So especially today when we are discussing the way forward with our class materials and resolutions and decisions there, please remember that we are not just voting and speaking for just those in our division, but also the faculty body as a whole. Zoom meeting guidelines. Senators are the only ones that can contribute to the discussions on agenda items. Others can contribute to the meeting by providing public comment. Public comment will be called at the beginning of the agenda, item 3.1, and then before each agenda item itself. So if you would like to speak, whether you are a senator or a member of the public wishing to give comment, please raise your virtual hand. For today's agenda, we will accept the we will accept the agenda as posted and distributed unless I hear otherwise. We do have one timed item, which is a presentation from those faculty members that participated in Long Beach City College's cultural curriculum audit. So that will be at 3:45. So other than that, we will take the items posted in the order that they were given. Which brings us to item 3.1, our public comment guidelines. So members of the public and Santa Barbara City College as a whole are encouraged and welcome to address the Senate at this time. You will have a time limit of 3 minutes to do so. Prior to the meeting, I did not receive any requests for public comments. However, you can request to make public comment at this time. So anyone wishing to do so can raise their virtual hand now, and you can address the Senate. Okay, looks like there is no request at this time for public comments. And so again, later in the agenda before our different items, people will be called, or rather another call out for public comment can be given then. All right, so my president's report. I have a list. I'm gonna try and make this brief. Ivana, from our college put out a call for folks to engage in scholarship review and do that important work. I have done this previously myself. It is one of the most gratifying and rewarding and illuminating things that you can do on our campus that has a direct result for our students. It is time intensive. However, reading the scholarship applications is a really amazing thing to engage in. And I would argue probably the most important thing that each of us could do at least once, not just out of campus service, but to hear about our students in their own voices, telling their own stories and requesting support for their academic goals. So if you haven't already done this, please consider taking the time. I recognize that everyone is overworked, undervalued, tired, hasn't had enough coffee. I know, and I promise you that this will be a really important thing that you do this semester. So if you aren't able to do so, please make sure that you reach out to your faculty in your division and encourage them to do so. I know that I'll probably get some nervous giggles when I say this, but of course you can use flex time in this way, right? So if you or part-time faculty are looking for flex time, this is one way to use that. Anna, clarifying question or comment?
Yes, just I guess a plug for this and encouraging folks to sign up, because the more of you that sign up, the less scholarships that you have to read. I cannot emphasize that enough. If the reason you are not signing up is because of how much you were assigned previously, tell 2 of your friends to sign up with you, and then boom, now you got a third of the applications you did before. Please sign up.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, what's the saying? Many hands make light work, right? Okay, so let's see. A couple more things in my list is of course out of order. I want to follow up on a couple of items that the Senate has moved on previously around resolution and just motions that we've made and work that we wanted to support. One of them was academic freedom, and I think that the Senate specifically said to create an ad hoc committee. And then also the other one was our resolution about the incident of anti-Semitism that happened in a non-credit art class, and giving faculty resources and having faculty development around those items. So there's not enough hours in the day, and we have plenty of committees on campus, and can't really get anybody to engage in this work. So I actually delegated the faculty professional development and the curation of sources on those specific items to Justina Bullard, who is our faculty professional development coordinator. She happily took it on and understood her charge of curating resources for faculty for the classroom and for professional development. After she curates those sources on those different items or any other that as the Senate works through, you know, our current agenda item of class materials or other items, the curation of information or the curated list will live on a Senate website that is linked to our main site on SBCC. So we've kicked around previously to have some of our professional development live on a website, and it was, you know, basically knocked down by previous leaders of the Senate for really good reason. You know, websites go out of date, they're hard to keep up and all of that. But I think this is a really good way to share some of the work of the Senate in a meaningful way that people can access as they want. And also Justina is available and willing to engage in this work, and I can't see an ad hoc committee doing it. So that's what we're gonna do. So it'll be awesome. So more on that soon, and I'm gonna overhaul other pages of the Senate website. For example, I think that our equivalency needs to be much more easy for applicants to navigate. So I think that we need a really cool, easy, clear page on equivalency. So more on that later when I find enough hours in the day to do all those things. But Justina is working on the anti-Semitism resources and the academic freedom ones. All right, along those same lines, I'll put this out to the faculty body. The ASCCC State Academic Senate has a journal, a magazine called Rostrum. Previously, I think it was in 2020, they had a special edition where they asked particularly Black faculty from around the state to contribute articles to their Rostrum in response to the murder of George Floyd. And also, you know, kind of a, let's say a mission gaslighting by a lot of places of being committed to anti-racism work, but not actually fulfilling it. I just received a solicitation today that they're gonna have a follow-up rostrum dedicated to what have you done? Like, what action did you take since the murder of George Floyd? So if a lot of you remember, I sent out a call to action myself as Senate president at that time, saying that we're going to do these things. I I think one of the most overt and tangible, obvious things that we could point to as a Senate body that we've engaged in anti-racism work was led by Dr. Melissa Menendez and unanimously approved by the Senate, which is our anti-racism hiring pilot that's happening right now with 10 faculty positions. And so I forwarded this request on to Dr. Menendez today and other members of the ad hoc anti-racism hiring committee to ask if they'd be willing to write an article. Melissa seems interested, so I'm psyched about that. And so I think that this is one place to say, this is what we've done. And like I said, like have something tangible, not to toot our own horn, but just to kind of engage in that scholarship, writing, sharing out of what we're doing now as a Senate at Santa Barbara City College. Also, I also think that it will allow for reflection on perhaps other areas of our campus and the Senate work where we haven't lived up to that. So more on that later. Like I said, Dr. Menendez seems very interested. I would definitely want to support that work in some way, whether I co-author the work or just say, hey, let's do this and bring it to the Senate and then forward it on to the state Senate. Our next meeting, our next regular meeting will be Wednesday, March 9th. It's going to be a regular meeting, but we're going to have one agenda item essentially, which is that state academic Senate mentor of mine. Jeffrey Dreyer from Taft College is going to come. He's going to give a presentation to the Senate about best practices from around the state. He's looked at our committee structure and engaged and worked with me for a long time, so he has some really nice recommendations for us. And he'll also talk to us about shared governance, Brown Act. He's noticed certain things about some of our governing docs that he would like to share back with us. And I think that that's going to be a really great resource. Please ask any or all of your faculty to attend that meeting, or perhaps after the meeting, share out the meeting recording. A lot of really important information about how other academic senates work around the state is going to be shared, and we're going to get really good recommendations. And if we want to implement any of them, I think having faculty knowledge of those suggestions and also buy-in, and also like a time to mull it over and recognize that it was coming from somebody that is outside of our college that has really great experience and knowledge and is telling us what we're doing great and areas where we could do things better. So I think, to help with that change, it would be really nice for you to have either invite your faculty into that conversation by coming to Senate that day or watching the video. Robbie, clarifying question or comment?
Yeah, I just wonder, so that I can better sell it to my division members, if sometime when somebody else is presenting, if you could write his name and credentials in the chat.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep, I can do that. Okay, last president's report. No, two more comments. One, I will share this out to all faculty. I shared this with senators already. There is a really interesting webinar on, quote, inclusive access. And the title of it is Inclusive or Exclusive Access. So thank you to Lori Vasquez for forwarding that on to me, and also the ESD senators. I forwarded it on to the rest of the Senate. And I'm going to put it in front of faculty so that we can all hear that really good information, and so that will also contribute to the deliberations and conversations at Senate. Okay, so the last thing I want to report on, going back to that idea of Dr. Melissa Menendez and all of the good work that came out of that ad hoc anti-racism hiring committee. I want to mention that yesterday we completed the third part of our 3-part 2-hour, 6 hours total, 2 hours each meeting training with Ben Dr. Estella Ben-Simone and Associates out of Q at USC. So we had over 60 members of our campus engage in that training, and we'll continue with a private one-on-one meeting with Ben-Simone for hiring committees in another week or two. The majority of the members participating in the training, of course, were faculty, because this is for faculty hiring, but also members of HR participated, non-faculty, for instance, like some of our EEO reps, like Chelsea Lancaster has been participating in it, as well as some of our administrators, our deans. Kathy Scott has joined the training. Kindred has been there when she could, and likewise. So there's, you know, a critical mass involved in this really high quality training. Yesterday, at the conclusion of our last training session together, we had a presentation from a Latina faculty member from Pasadena, and I'm sorry, I meant to grab her name for my notes, and I realized that I didn't. Came out of a stressful meeting prior to this one, so I forgot to do that. But she was part of a pilot and an overhaul of hiring practices at Pasadena a number of years ago. She shared with us the, you know, the integrated EDI plan from the Chancellor's office, and showed different areas of our hiring processes that could be, that were improved upon for Pasadena, and that, you know, for us to think about as well. I just want to point out that I think a lot of the stuff that Dr. Estella Ben-Simone shared with us, our own ad hoc hiring ad hoc committee did already. I think that we're doing a lot of really good things. I think that the overhaul and this pilot that we're doing have some really good changes. There's, of course, you know, areas of improvement that could be made for next year, and putting this into procedure and policy. And to that end, I asked Dr. Z. Race today if he and I could create some kind of survey to share out with faculty and anybody involved in the faculty hiring process this spring, to give feedback on what worked, what didn't work, what surprised you. Oh, thank you, Anna. Anna put her name in the chat for me. Isela Osegueda. I'll put it in the chat because I probably didn't get the pronunciation quite right. Thank you, Anna, for grabbing that for me. Okay, which brings me to my last point, and this is something that Senate Steering was CC'd on today, and I'm asking the Senate in kind of that request to agendize items kind of way. So this is coming from your Senate president, and ran it past Senate Steering, and Senate Steering was like, yeah, let's open this up to the Senate. Okay, so I think that the Senate has heard about this previously. There was some questions made about the appointments to the interim athletic director hiring committee in the fall. And in response to that, I shared out the emails that I exchanged with those that were questioning it, and I also gave a very detailed explanation of why I picked the people I did, and got Senate Steering approval, and then also the thinking that I always have whenever I am asked to make Senate appointments to different committees, whether they be hiring or otherwise. Bullet points were, I always try and make sure that I am including people that aren't usually on hiring committees. I'm including people that are BIPOC identity. And I always try and include at least one educational support division member in a faculty hiring appointment for like an administrator position. So that is always what, like, the mindset that I start with and what I do, and that was true of that appointment. And so I asked the Senate who wants to be on this. Kathy O'Connor volunteered for herself. did not volunteer anybody else from her department. I asked the ESD person that I originally went to, wasn't able, and they gave me Lacey Peters' name. And so I went to Lacey Peters and asked them. And then as a former member of the department, and as somebody who teaches a lot of kinesiology majors, I asked Peter Aguilar from Earth and Biological Sciences. So that was the decision I made, and there was questions around it at that time, and I shared my thoughts there. It's my understanding that we are currently advertising for the permanent position of the athletic director. And the PE department has shared with me that they are requesting the Senate not to appoint 3 people, but to appoint 4 people. I don't think that we have the authority to do so. The other thing is they have 4 very specific people from the department that they would like to appoint. Because this is seems to be an area of perhaps disagreement, philosophical disagreement, I would like the Senate to perhaps have the Senate discussion at Senate about this so that it's not me operating in a vacuum and just doing what I want to do. So that we can, participate in a democratic process. I also want to share that I would like the Senate not to have a conversation and a decision made around this particular position. But what I would like the Senate conversation to drive and set a, let's say, precedent for is all of Senate's appointments to hiring committees. Meaning, perhaps you all think I'm on to something by saying we should always try to have an ESD, a BIPOC faculty member, and perhaps like a person from the department or division. Like maybe you all think that that's a really good idea and you want to like codify that and say that from henceforward, that's what we're doing. Or you think that's a dumb idea and only the people from that division or department. So for instance, we just hired an administrator, an administrative position in student health. Perhaps your opinion on the matter is only those faculty under student health should be involved in that. So I would like the Senate to pick this up and work on this, not just to answer the questions, comments, and concerns of PE and have them share with the Senate their thinking, but also have the Senate deliberate around this so that as a body, we can make a decision so that it's not just me making appointments for on my whims, but that we have a broader conversation around this. So can I get the temperature of the Senate? Are you all interested in that? If yes, can you say yes or give me a virtual thumbs up? If this is not worth the Senate time and in procedure and policy just says that the Senate makes appointments and we can go ahead. Okay, so I'm overwhelmingly seeing a yes. So we will bring this back to the Senate to deliberate. We will have the conversation for this particular appointment so that it's not me, so it's a Senate decision. And then we will also set some kind of precedent for moving forward. Sounds good. Thank you so much for that. So that's it. I'm going to conclude my Senate President report at this time. We didn't have a written report from our Senate liaisons. So if Senate liaisons, if any of you would like to highlight anything for the Senate now would be a great time. None of you? Okay. Then I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Kathy Scott, our EVP, for her report to the Senate. Kathy?
Thank you, Ray. I just have, I think, 5 things and none of them are very long. The first one is a lot of the classes came back on campus February 22nd, which was this week. And I know it took a lot of angst for us to get to this point, but from at least my view of it, I think it went pretty smoothly. We were able to get students through the check-in stations quickly, get them onto cleared 4 quickly if they hadn't done that before. We had the antigen test there. So students who, for whatever reason, may not have got tested beforehand were able to get a fast test and get to class. No one was sent home. And then the large classes had a wristband monitor. And I think it went pretty smoothly. I haven't heard complaints. Anyways, I'm appreciative of everybody who was part of that. Joyce did a good job. We had a lot of people at the tables. Everybody was out there. Even Kindred was out there being a wristband checker. So it was a good start, I believe. Okay, other things that are not related to that. I was also going to have the scholarship committee on there, Rayanne, and I'm going to do it. If I can find time to do it, I think lots of people can. So I'm going to do it, and Bea doesn't know, but I'm going to ask her to do it as well. We also started giving out the CARES grants this semester for students. And this is the money that comes out of the COVID funds. Just want you to know that we started awarding those. And for the first time, we're giving them to students who may only be taking 3 units. And that came out of a request from ESL, and we agreed with it. And so more students are eligible now. We're also pursuing an RFA for Rising Scholars. And this would officially make that program a categorical program out of the Chancellor's Office that would serve currently and formerly incarcerated students. In many ways, it's a continuation of our transitions program, which is housed under EOPS, and a continuation of the reentry grant that we received in 2019. If it is approved, and we do believe that it will be, we would be guaranteed 3 years of funding beginning July 1st. July 1st, 2022. So I just want to tell you that. And I think there was a last one. Dang it. I also wanted to mention that I did get around to student services. It was great to see student services open. I got to many of the offices over there, and it was super. And I haven't made it to the library or the LRC this week, but I will go over there. And it's just so nice to see so many things open for our students. And the library has really stepped up, and I am super happy about that because I know what an important space that is for our students. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of those areas. I think that's, sorry, one more thing. The LBCC cultural curriculum audit. I am just very grateful that 5 faculty agreed to go through that training. I know it was a lot of work. They did the deliverables, they created new assignments, they created new things. And I have no idea what they're going to say today, but I'm just super grateful because my heart was in that program. It was the thing that I was probably most proud of in my 27 years in the system. So I'm hoping that parts of it were helpful to this college. One more thing about Isela, Ray. Isela started at Pasadena when I was there as a vice president, and I was her mentor. And I wanted you to know, because I don't think she said it, but she got a vice president position at Coastline. So she's the VP of instruction there now. And she part of the way that she got that position was because the chief instructional officers, of which I am a part, although I was not part of this effort, they reached out to really try to recruit people into these positions, people of color into these positions. And she was part of an organized effort, and she went to the last CIO conference, and she got a lot of mentoring and a lot of assistance. And she's very deserving to go into that VP position. And I was really very excited for her. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Robin?
Yeah, thanks, Rand. Kathy, I just wanted to express my extreme appreciation for the willingness of whoever decides those things, but I know that you were in charge of it, for approving the emergency funds to go to students who are taking fewer units this time. I know in ESL, we were extremely aware that many of our most vulnerable students were the ones who were taking fewer units, and that just makes a huge difference. And I was so appreciative of you being willing to take the time to readdress that. So thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, Ray. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate you saying that. And when I talked to Paloma about it, she was very supportive, and she's the one that did the work. So I have to give her credit. But I did agree with you, and I supported it.
Well, thanks to everybody. It's going to make a big difference for ESL students, and I'm sure others as well. So.
Okay. All right, thank you for that, Kathy. And we are now at item 6.1, our consent agenda. We have no items to consider. And so we can get going with our next item on the agenda, item 7.1. Speaking of the LBCC cultural curriculum audit, some of us, myself included, will be giving you a brief presentation of the deliverables that Dr. Scott mentioned. Also, I've said this in a couple of places, but it needs to be said again. Thank you to Dr. Kathy Scott for making the connection, for bringing this up. She's the one that connected us with the colleagues at Long Beach that she knows, and also she was willing to provide a stipend for those that participated in this work and were able to get deliverables. As we are listening to this presentation as a Senate, I would like you all to consider where we can institutionalize these practices. We've done a lot of different trainings, different DI work in different areas for different reasons, whether it was, our move to DE because of the pandemic. And we haven't yet institutionalized a lot of those practices. And so as we give the presentation today, I want you to think about where in 10+1 can we pull into our processes some of the things that we're seeing here. For instance, I have some ideas around this, and I know Tara does as well as the other members of those of us that went. But I also want you to be thinking about that as well. So let's see, I'll introduce everyone that was part of it. Dr. Tara Carter, Justina Buller, Josh Ramirez, as well as Melinda Gandara. I'm sorry, I had a really bad meeting before this. I'm like a mess. Am I missing anyone? Tara, Melinda, Justina, Josh, me. That's 5 of us, yes? And it is important to recognize that our FRC director, Rob Brown, also participated with us. We totally excluded him because he's not faculty and this is a faculty senate. No, I'm totally joking. No, we just decided because we're the faculty members and we didn't want to loop him in as an administrator and ask for more work other than him already participating. So that's why we're going to focus our presentation today. So Justina, do you want to pull up the slides for all of us and drive maybe? Or I can. Coolness. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Right. So the 5 of us went virtually to LBCC and engaged in their cultural curriculum audit. Some of the work that we engaged in, you will feel is very similar to trainings, in-house trainings we've had. And some of it is new. And we did this both synchronously on Zoom together in 2 meetings a week, and then also asynchronously through Canvas and discussion boards there. So what you're seeing right now is a screenshot of what their cultural curriculum audit looks like. Very similar to other in-house trainings that we have. Their process lives in a Canvas shell. And it truly is set up like a class where you engage in the material, like I said, either synchronously or asynchronously. And it lives in the shell, and you have your, you upload your assignments, your deliverables, and you engage in different ways through this medium. I feel like there was one more thing I was supposed to add. Tara, do you remember what we were supposed to? There's something else. Or Justina? Or did I get it all?
I think you got it all.
Okay, cool. Which brings us to the next slide, which I'm going to give you. And we're each going to give you one of the deliverables. So there's 5 of us, and there was essentially 5 deliverables. So as a group, we met and discussed how we'll do this presentation. And so mine just happens to be the welcoming page, and Tara will show you hers, and the others will show you theirs. And you'll see a different deliverable from each of us, but we all did all of these. So actually, I'm going to take over the screen sharing, because all that you see here is a static screenshot of my welcome page, but I actually want to take you to my real life Canvas shell. So part of the work, part of the commitment to doing this cultural curriculum audit was that you would take your deliverables and basically implement them immediately. And so each of us, when we applied to engage in this and do the training, we had to identify what course we would be doing the homework for, essentially. So mine, of course, is Chem 101. And the screenshot that you actually saw was actually of my previous homepage. And I know that this isn't that revolutionary, but like the idea is you have a welcoming, culturally competent, culturally relevant landing page for your class. Mine evolved. So if we look at my original one, let me find my original homepage, which you saw the screenshot of. This is what students saw when they first went into my Canvas shell. A welcoming message that sounds like me. That's a big part of all of this work, right? Is like maybe all of the different assignments or things don't work for you as an individual instructor with your discipline, but as I always say, it's like choosing items off of a menu. And so when you choose them, like a big part of all of this was like, you make it work for you. Like, is your voice in this so that your students can get to know you as their instructor and make that connection. So hopefully you all, as we look at this together, you all think that my page sounds like me. Hello, hey, hi, everyone, right? And I give them a brief introduction. I have these little icons, right? You're currently viewing what I refer to as the course homepage, right? Not assuming anyone knows what like a landing page is or a homepage, or if I start talking about this in class, do people know that I'm talking about this main page on my Canvas? And then also I explain that my course is organized by modules. So same idea, like don't assume that anybody knows what a module is. And then I'm just, trying to impress upon my students as they come into my course that I'm excited to share chemistry with them. And then also I have this class orientation module, which I know a lot of us have seen. One of the aesthetically pleasing things that I really liked about the cultural curriculum audit Canvas class that we all took was, using a small spreadsheet, and that's all this is, as kind of a quick access page. Theirs was on the top, mine's at the bottom. It's just the way I wanted it organized. And so here you can see I'm doing this hybrid thing this HyFlex thing this semester. So if anybody wants to join my class meeting, it's here. The class schedule, you can get your lab content, lecture content here, my contact. I have my course materials, right? You can link out to the class syllabus site where you can get more information about the class, tutors and other support, and then on campus places to study, right? Like student-centered, not necessarily like content, but like welcoming to them to the page. And then, as I said, it's evolved over the course, just a few short weeks, because I don't want to say, hi, welcome to the course on week 6. That just makes it look like I'm not like paying attention to what I'm sharing with my students. So it has changed slightly, right? But a very welcoming course page, so that when your students are going into your course and seeing this course homepage for the first time, that it's not just the modules or boxes, and that they get a sense of who you are, what they're going to experience in the class, and so on and so forth. So I'll stop there. We'll kick it over to our next presenter.
All right, everyone. So good afternoon. Just getting the audio set up here. And thank you, Ray. Good afternoon, everyone. Our next deliverable is the equitized syllabus as one of the deliverables for our course. And as one of the first outward facing components of our instruction, an equitized syllabus can go a long way towards helping students feel a little bit more welcome, towards helping students feel a little bit more supported, and showing our desire to be more equitable in the way that we can make the course a little bit more transparent, a little bit more accessible, and also maybe even moving away from reduplicating some of the stark, overly rule-driven language that was modeled for many of us when we were students. For me, one of the biggest takeaways from the LBCC training is how students can connect with us. And although the LBCC training does have some things that they would hope we would aspire to in designing our syllabi, that we would be more enthusiastic, that we would be more supportive, that we need not have the syllabus be so rule-driven, and that we express our concern for equity and justice. As Rayanne had said, do what works well for you, express what you want to express for yourself. And for me, one of the themes that they actually discussed throughout the training was about addressing our own intersectionality. I hadn't really considered before how that might actually be an avenue for students to connect with me and to feel welcome. But the more I thought about it, the things that made me as a student and for which students can connect, the idea that I'm Filipino, that I'm first generation, that I'm gay, are all avenues that would allow students to connect for me. And this is the first semester that I tried this in all my classes, and I've had more students visiting me in office hours as a result. So I think there might be something onto this. I'm a particularly shy person, which is strange for teaching, but really it was one of the things that students felt comfortable connecting with me on. Again, to your comfort level on this one, but I found it pretty effective. I redesigned my syllabus to be more clear about the culture of our instruction as well. I borrowed a little of this from English's Josh Escobar. The idea that the syllabus can talk to students. The explanation of the purpose of our SLOs, for example, why they are important to me, why students should care, and also who else beyond the instructor is setting the expectation for our learning. And on those expectations, how to communicate our standards without being overly rule-driven and overly punitive. Like, for example, our academic integrity statements. During the training, we did debate how to set standards about cheating while also saying encouragingly to students, I value your ideas, and I also want you to develop a sense of your own accomplishment in conveying your own ideas. I mean, there are very clear statements about what the penalties are for cheating. But I think that we can balance that out also with a discussion that says, we want you to bring your ideas forward. And also we want you to be proud of the work that you do and not borrowing it from other individuals without crediting them as well. And lastly, as a work in progress, I'm taking a cue from Rayanne on this one. I saw the QR code that you use on one of your syllabi here. Working towards making the syllabus a little bit more accessible. I mean, the syllabi that we typically collect in PDF and Word doc form for accreditation purposes and for record keeping can link to an online liquid syllabus that's a little bit more mobile friendly, and also allows us to be able to break this apart so that students can actually search through the syllabus for themes that they are looking for. And so I think that this is a good way not only for making this work for whatever devices that students bring to the table, but also makes the syllabus a little bit more accessible as well. So with that, thank you, everyone. I'm going to be passing the baton to Melinda for our next deliverable, the transparent assignment.
Thank you, Josh. Justina, I'm going to impose on you. I've had a hand injury and I'm now not right. My right hand is not working. Can you bring up my slides? I've got 4 slides, and if you'd be kind enough, I'll just kind of go through them and then tell you where I'm at. So what I'm going to be talking about is the transparent assignment. And I think this was really eye-opening for me, because one of the things that came out of this is how to take away some of the pressure on students on how am I grading? How are you going to look at the assignment? How do you break it down? And I wanted to start with the template that we were given. So in doing the transparent assignment, what we're going to do is really try to remove some of the anxiety that comes with performance, right? How do I turn in an assignment? What are you looking for? And how do we get there? And in this transparent assignment, what they did was they broke it down into the assignment name, the due date, and the purpose. This is defining the objectives and the reasons why this assignment is going to benefit you, your learning, your educational and career goals. So it's kind of giving you an idea of why you're doing it, the skills that you'll be able to practice. And I thought this was an insightful one, so that students can be able to see that this idea of working through an assignment is something that will carry forward in their own professional and career objectives, as well as their academic objectives. And then the knowledge that they'll be able to gain by doing this, and the task, what they need to do to perform, right? What are the expectations? And that's really outlined in the criteria for success. And what this is providing the opportunity for students to know exactly what it is that we're looking for. And I thought this one was interesting because one of the first things they want us to do is to work with the students in analyzing in a collaborative way what a good work is, right? How do we assess that? And to be able to critique that. And so that gives a greater understanding for the ability to have a somewhat of a checklist of things that you'll be looking for as the grader, or how this, in my case, the example I'm going to show us, in how that can help us with an online discussion to be much more engaging. And so what I've done here is this was taken directly out of our training, and then this came out of Marianne Wilkmas' transparent assignment design. So all of these links are live. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do is I took a sample assignment that I work with students, and this comes from their reading of Zoot Suit. This is a historical play by Luis Valdez, and I always kind of like to highlight it with a little example of just some of the ideas of what they're going to be experiencing. And what I highlighted here are 3 headlines that came out in the 1940s, 1943 to 1944, showing the language that was being used with regards to what was happening. What they are going to do here is, this is an online discussion. So this is something that's interactive for all students. And they have already read at this point the play, and they understand the historical context. And now we're looking at what I term the power of words. How is this then explained in the press? And highlighting the transparencies, I want to then connect it to what's happening today, right? How does this happen to have any connections with the present world that we live in? So here what I do is I have them read The Press and the Riot. This comes from the PBS, The American Experience series. And what I like about this is that it gives them context with regards to the news reporting that's happening at the time. And the prompt reads, what are some parallels between the racial profiling experienced by Mexican-American youth in the 1940s and current perceptions of aggrieved populations in our society today? Is Zoot Suit relevant today? Why? So what they need to do is they're going to post a response in about 350 words. And then once they post that, they'll have access to other students, and then they'll be doing a response to 2 additional postings. Next slide, please. So what I've done here is I've taken that sample breakdown that we were looking at earlier, and I've put it directly into Zoot Suit so that it really allows me to not only convey what my expectations are, but for them to have an idea as to why we're doing the assignment. So the assignment name is Online Discussion Zoot Suit. I usually give students usually a week to do their work. I have them writing 1,000 words a week. So they're doing 2 different kinds of prompts. One is an online discussion and one is a reflective think piece, but both of them all come together. So it's quite a bit of writing. And so I make this one less structured. The purpose of the assignment is to draw from historical writings that they've read and some of the themes that they found in Zoot Suit. And the purpose is to specifically be able to make comparisons between the past and the present. So I really want them to be able to see how this can come together. The skill is that the purpose of the assignment is to help you practice pulling information forward and making connections to issues that affect us today, in essence, drawing from that purpose. And the knowledge is this assignment will help you become familiar with important content knowledge in Chicano studies and situate the work in its social, political, historical, cultural, and literary context. Now, what's important about the knowledge is this is coming directly out of the work that our department does, and Professor Tomas Carrasco and I scaffold. So we're using the same work together so that a lot of this is going to make a lot of connections in both the classes they take from him and my classes as well. So by reinforcing this, it's giving them a real solid foundation, especially for those of them who are majors in our department. Then I break down the task. You start by reading The Press and the Riot and think about how it connects to Zoot Suit. And then I usually put a number of questions for them to think about in being able to draw that together. So how does the Los Angeles Times report on the riots? What language does the press use? What photographs did they publish for the reporting? And how might this be important today? And can you think of any examples that relate to this? So not only are they getting the prompt, but they're getting questions that lead them to be able to answer the prompt. So this is giving them more information and a foundation on how to read The Press and the Riot and some of the questions to ask. Now, the criteria for success is something that I've really been working on. And the online reflection should address all aspects posed in the prompt. So it's usually, as you saw, a layered prompt. They should be thoughtful and thorough, and they're meant to be informal in nature. So what I try to do here is I give a little bit more leeway. I'd rather have them get their ideas down on paper than to have it perfect. This is not about being perfect. It's really about being able to express yourself. And what I talk about is a good contribution might be an insightful question or observation relating to our readings or even material we covered earlier in class. And I think this is so important that it's not just about one aspect, but it's really pulling in from the class more holistically. It can be a thoughtful analysis of what you've read, good comments build upon our online discussions, evidence that you've been reading and making connection with your classmates. And this is what's so critical. This is where they really start to engage with each other. A less helpful contribution restates what has already been posted in our online discussions or readings. So try to make connections with the concepts we explore in this course. Remember that this grading policy reflects a teaching philosophy that everyone, you and I, share responsibility for creating an academically engaging learning experience. And I really emphasize that because it's not a one-way street. Students will share lived realities, and this is going to be a very interactive way for me as well. Next slide, please. So going through this, what I have them do is I take a reflection that somebody has already posted in a prior class. And what I have them do is I want them to collaboratively analyze and highlight areas that draw directly from the prompt. So what I normally do is this would have been a pie chart with all the words that come out and who would have highlighted the words all together. But I thought for this instance, it would be best to just actually even see the reflection and to see how those words pop out. So this is drawing on the parallels of racial profiling. Phrases like fit the description come to mind. So they're already starting to make connections of Mexican American youth with regards to what's happening today with our African Americans with regards to profiling. This student says, one assumes that if a person is Black, dressed a certain way, talks a certain way, or has a certain demeanor, and these are connecting directly to Zoot Suit, by the way, because it's about the Zoot Suit, that they're more likely to have committed a crime. So this racial profiling is examined very carefully here. And he highlights that it's essentially the same story as Zoot Suit, and the Mexican Americans are arrested and charged with a crime they didn't commit. So the reasoning for their arrest, so he poses his own question within the prompt. Their race and choice of clothing, not only is Zoot Suit relevant today, but it's also essential material. So he's really pulling in a lot of the experiences of reading it very carefully and coming away with valuable lessons. And one of them is, perception is key. So what he wants to do is he's highlighting this. They looked at a number of the short articles from the press and the riot, and that physical characteristics played a role in determining whether somebody was guilty or not. And he ends it by saying this is relevant today. And he highlights Trayvon Martin as an example, killed by a neighborhood watchman because he looked quote unquote suspicious. So it's important that what we have in mind you, this I think was 368 words, did a lot, right? He was able to go right into the prompt and start working directly from that. And the students got to see this. And so what this does for many of our students is it's a much more transparent way of sharing how they can pull together. And I thought it was so important because one of the things that happens are students start to see other students' work and they start to get excited about their own ways of having to negotiate it as well. This is a very transparent way of having a number of students who maybe, some of them are stronger writers, some of them have great ideas, and putting them all together, right? And being able to then work together collectively. I end in the next slide, by showing you a sample of a complete, a sample reflection and responses. And this, again, like the prior student, just pulls it together and again, does it very succinctly. And then I put in the 3 responses. And I'm highlighting this because I thought it was so important to see that they are able to do so much in 350 words. And what I enjoyed about this one in particular is that it's a part of a larger conversation that she talks about. And she ends by saying, to be honest, I'm exhausted by the violence and the political manipulation. This was during the Trump administration, and also highlights our local Santa Barbara press. And I thought this was so important because it tells me she's reading the paper, she's connecting it that we were reading archival papers, and how it frequently publishes slanderous and racist articles, and our mayor has become increasingly silent throughout the Black Lives Matter movement. If we look back at mainstream media coverage on the Ferguson protests or the beginnings of the pandemic, the cycle towards racial bias is well documented. And she does a really great job of being able to do that. Now, what's interesting here is she'll then say, much like wearing the Zoot Suits being illegal in Los Angeles, this came out of a prior lecture. And one of the things that we found out is that the Zoot Suit is still considered illegal. And so all of a sudden she's now connecting and using prior lectures and pulling it together. The responses she receives are very thoughtful, they're constructive, they like how she broke it down, they agree, and they also add to the content that she's also developed here. And I have to say that, again, I'm not grading the students on their ability to write, but really to express ideas. And this gives a little bit more freedom in being able to highlight that. And that goes really to the last reply, where I couldn't agree with you more. I'm so tired of hate and discrimination. At this point in history, you would think that things would be different, but it's always something new. People would just find ways to have history repeat itself. As a Latina woman, it's so upsetting to see local vendors being harassed. It breaks my heart that I live in a town where we have a mayor that doesn't support important movements. The Zoot Suit is relevant since it's happening. It's just in a different font. Police aren't protecting the people they should. Like you said, the media only shows you a certain side of the story. We are portrayed as quote unquote dangerous and lazy, when at the end of the day, we're just people who are trying to live better lives. I feel like zoot suits shouldn't be illegal in Los Angeles. It's a big part of Latino culture. It should be seen as something beautiful and elegant. Natural hair should be encouraged in workplaces. They need to stop trying to erase our cultures and start embracing them. We have the right, and we should be able to practice and wear it without being shamed for it. So it's a very powerful response. And what I try to do is I want students to be able to see how they have their own lived experiences and how they can also incorporate that into the assignment. So the transparent assignment is something that I feel very strongly about, because I think it takes away some of the anxiety of how do I get started? And it is important. I don't show that consistently have to do this with each assignment. Once they get the idea, they start to take off on their own. And so what it does is it takes away some of the angst and anxiety of how do I get started? Just that first part removes some of that barrier. Thank you, Justina. I appreciate your help.
All right, everybody. I think I'm next. Justina, can you stop sharing so I can share my screen? Because these are just screenshots of what I am going to go over with you all. Oh, I have to, even though I've been on Zoom all day, I'm like, how do I use Zoom? All right, folks. So my deliverable was to create a culturally responsive content page. And you might ask yourself, what in the world does that mean? And for this assignment, it was really thinking about an online distance education modality. And so our lectures are often presented either through a Canvas page or with video and what have you. And the goal here was to apply the principles behind culturally responsive teaching into that Canvas page. And what culturally responsive teaching entails is making the content of your course both relatable to your students, so knowing who are your students, and allowing students to see themselves being reflected in that content. And I know what you're all thinking. Tara, this is really easy for you. You teach anthropology. It's so easy to offer a diverse range of imagery and examples in a course that studies culture. And my response to you would be yes, but there are some topics that are very difficult for me. And so I picked a topic in my cultural anthropology class that I have throughout the years had a lot of difficulty in getting student engagement with. And this is it. It's on foraging-based societies. And so foraging societies, if you don't know, there are only a handful of cultures today who practice foraging, but this means that they do not use any agriculture whatsoever. They place very little value on material items. They're nomadic, so they don't have private property, including like a permanent home. All these kinds of things make students go, I cannot relate to these folks. And that's, of course, the antithesis of the goal of anthropology, which is to really bring to an audience the cultures around the world to show similarities, and then to also allow us to kind of question some of our own practices that we take for granted as being quote unquote normal and natural. So because students really have a hard time relating to foragers, even though I share with them, and here you can see my original lecture page for my students, I share with them all kinds of wonderful benefits that foragers can boast that we cannot boast in an agricultural based society, such as that they have a very strong ethic of cooperation. They have very little inequality. They're never on the brink of starvation. I still, every single time I taught this course, would get essays back talking about how foragers are poverty stricken. They must always be hungry. They don't have cell phones. Woe is them. And even sometimes very derogatory comments about foragers as being primitive and what have you. So this was my original page. And I give a little bit of an overview of what will be At the bottom of the page, which is a video of me lecturing on foraging-based cultures, and I attach readings to it and what have you. And I thought, hey, this is pretty good. I've got a lot of diversity of images and notes to try to whet the appetite of students, but it wasn't working. So what I got out of the LBCC curriculum audit was maybe I need to find a way to make foraging cultures really relatable to students, to see that they have things in common with foraging-based cultures, and maybe there are lessons we can learn to apply to some of our own pressing social problems. So I created a page that is meant to be looked at first before I ever give a lecture. And so in this page, I talk about how foraging cultures really see the world very differently, and how, again, yes, they can boast things like having no inequality, but they also have a better diet. So they have better mental and physical health, and they work fewer hours a day. And then I suggest to them, to kind of whet their appetite, are there things that foraging cultures can help us to improve in our own society? So to try to make this really relatable to students, I say, hey, guess what? There's a long history of foraging cultures right here in Santa Barbara, where I'm allowed to, to bring in the Chumash, which I'll talk a lot about in my lectures. But here I am kind of connecting place to students so they can say, oh, right, these folks they're here. This is fantastic. I can relate to this. And maybe I've engaged in like acorn processing in high schools and elementary schools, because I know our schools do that a lot. And then I say, hey, you've probably practiced a little bit of foraging yourself. And here I mentioned that all of us probably at one time or another have gone fishing or gone out looking for wild berries, or maybe your grandma sent you out to find herbs to make teas, which is really common. And so folks can say, okay, they're not so dissimilar. And then I said, hey, what if, because foragers view their physical environment really strikingly differently than we do, what if we could use the perception that foragers have about their environment as a tool in combating climate change? And this really sparks the interest of students because they're really super interested in climate change. And so here I kind of, again, whet the appetite for what we can take away from our readings on groups like the Bamambuti, who seem worlds apart from us, but maybe they can offer a template for finding solutions. And then I suggest too, here's and I bring in TikTok because they love TikTok, and I don't get it, but they love it. So here's a really famous TikToker who actually was interviewed for an NPR podcast. No, I did not go directly to TikTok. I went to NPR because I'm old, but I also allowed them to find these things for me, where she talked about how practicing a little bit of foraging in her life really helped to repair her diminished mental and physical health. So again, it's about offering solutions from a different culture, solutions to problems we face in our own society. And so we have to remember that for our students, yes, they're very young, but they're adults. And adults need to know why this matters. What are they going to be able to do with this material? How can they put it into practice in their daily lives? And so having a page like this allows students to not only see themselves in the material, but to know why it matters for them directly. And I even then, because this was also part of the deliverable, you pair it up with assignments for students to work off of. And one of my assignments was to create this Padlet board for students to go out into their environment and actually find food resources. And I let them cheat a little because some of these are planted for sure, but they're still not going to the store and buying them. And then I suggested to the students that we are now one foraging community who is sharing resources with one another. We're practicing reciprocity. So they really kind of can feel a kind of experimentally, what it's like to be a foraging society and why they would never ever actually reach the point of starvation. And bringing this back then again too, for why it matters, we have a discussion board topic on how we might be able to take some of the principles of foraging-based societies and apply it to finding solutions for climate change. So at the end of the day, everybody wins. I get my students to finally actually read the material on foraging-based cultures. I only make them read a little tiny bit of one ethnography. And this semester was the first time I had students asking for the full ethnography. They wanted to read more about Bamambuti society. So I'm getting them to work with the content I wanted them to, and they're able to take it in a direction that's really, truly meaningful and engaging for themselves. And what this work really required of me was to be honest. In the past, I would just blame them. Like, they're addicted to their phones. They don't care about any culture that isn't, just like theirs, and also wants to, have the latest, greatest iPhones or what have you. It's all them. And in reality, it was me, right? It was how I was introducing the topics to them. And I needed to find a way to really engage with students on their own terms and to demonstrate to them that it had purpose and that it had meaning. And some of you may ask yourself, like, doesn't this take a really long time? And the answer is no, it really doesn't. And at the end of the day, it was both more rewarding for me as the instructor, because I didn't have to read terrible essays about primitive foraging cultures. I got rid of all of those. And students now, so far, they're reporting to me like this is now their most favorite topic that they've studied in anthropology. So I'll count that as a win. And I thank you for your time. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to our patiently waiting last participant, and that is the one and only Justina. Take it away, Justina.
All right, so I got the deliverable of an active learning activity. So much like Melinda and Tara, this is something I had already done in my classroom, but the LBCC cultural curriculum audit helped me reframe it. And I'm not at the spot yet in the semester where I can really tell whether or not that reframing is going to pay off, but I have some hints, some hopes. I do feel like I'm getting a little more student buy-in on the project. So here is the project, and I put here, it's for my History 101 class. I now use it for all of my history classes, including my environmental history. I call it a visual analysis project for lack of a more creative term. I keep challenging my students to come up with a better one. They're like, that works. So that's what I keep calling it. The overview that I give them is this. It's not a writing assignment. You'll have plenty of time to practice that skill in other parts of this class. I said, instead, this assignment is primarily a visual project that encourages you to engage a part of the brain that we often forget is really useful for both memory and analysis. So I tell them they will create a visual illustration of 4 key concepts from a week of class. I say it can be a chart, a graph, a picture, a meme, a sculpture, an abstract expressionist image. Like, I don't care, just an image. But then I tell them, the more abstract you get, the more you're going to need to really explain your illustration in your presentation. And then I also have them do peer reviews of this project, which honestly ended up being the most fun thing for me in the past. I'm really hoping that that part will just even get better this time around. We give out awards to people. So there's different award categories for like most humorous and different things that students get to give to each other. So it's a way to make that peer review process kind of fun. All right, so I'm not going to read through all the instructions here, but the key idea is that every week we cover a textbook chapter, a course read article, which is just my name for a scholarly journal article, and then I do a case study. And each one of those has a thesis. And students, we all know this, students have a really hard time grasping what a thesis is. I did when I first got into college. And so this active learning activity emerged from me trying to think about if there was another avenue to getting at how to explain a thesis and how to really get students to like visualize a thesis to see if that would help. And then I thought, why not throw in an extra component here where I ask them to visually illustrate a discussion post. So they have to choose 2 differing opinions from 2 different classmates and illustrate that debate. So that's kind of the key component of what they're doing here. They can do this in any format they want. They can do like a physical poster. They can do like a PowerPoint presentation, really like the sky's the limit sort of thing. So then I give them just a quick tip. I tell them this is a difficult project. And so I wanted to say that, up front, that I get it. This is probably not something you've done before. It's okay to kind of feel a sense of struggle. it's difficult because we're not used to illustrating an idea or a concept. And so I told them your impulse or your instinct is to think really literally here. So, chapter 1 of a US history textbook might talk about Christopher Columbus. And I said, don't draw me a picture of Christopher Columbus, right? That's not the thesis. That's not a concept or an idea. So I try to give them some tips here. And I also create a page where I show them projects from previous classes, because I feel that that kind of reduces the panic around this assignment. So I had mixed results with this. I've been doing it, I think I started it the semester we went into lockdown. And so I was really discouraged because I never got like a full chance to see what it felt like in person. And then I kind of adapted it for the online world. It works pretty well. Some students really love it, but I would say the majority of students feel a lot of trepidation around this because they automatically think it's an art project. And then I'm judging them on their artistic talents. And no matter how much I say, I'm a terrible artist and I'm not judging your artistic talent, they still think that. So the LBCC audit training helped me think about how to reframe this for the students. So this semester, I did this in a lecture activity, a live lecture with a class. So it's not something I could capture on Canvas. But I framed the activity differently. Instead of just saying like it's an active learning activity, I want to get you a little more engaged, I framed this as culturally responsive pedagogy. So I told them this is an opportunity for them to really bring in their worlds, their materiality, their culture, their way of thinking about things. And I used past projects to illustrate how one thesis could be illustrated so differently by 3 students, right? Like if you just looked at it, you'd be like, that's not the same thesis. As a way to, again, really illustrate, students are bringing in different things, different perspectives to our classroom. And I want to embrace that, right? That's going to make our study together more engaging and richer. So when I did that this semester, I did absolutely sense a little less pushback and resistance. It seemed like that somehow got through the idea like, oh, it's not an art project. And the students seem to be a little more excited about it. So the verdict's still out. I'll have to see when the first project started coming in. I have a couple lined up from past students. They're just stunning. If Ray, I don't know if we have a couple minutes left. I kind of was sensing we're already going over time. So I don't have to show those if we're out of time.
I think you should, just because we're there.
Okay. I'll do it kind of abbreviated. So this was a student for a 101 class. I don't know if y'all can tell. This is a life-sized tree that she created on her closet drawer. And there is deep metaphorical significance in all of this. So this captured the thesis for 3 different readings and a discussion post. This part over here that's in the black, she's illustrating a shadow cast by a tree. And this illustrates a point of contention in the discussion between students that week. So it's just, I wanted to play it for you because you could get her voice. It's amazing, but we're kind of short on time here. But one example of something a student did, and she was really worried because she's like, I'm not an artist. And I said, you can cut out pictures. I don't care. And yet look at the creativity that showed up with her. Another one that was really great, I'll play just a couple seconds of this one. She did a stop motion animated
reminds us
little
that
film.
the forests, the deserts, the natural environments and wildlife, the meadowlands that existed as the American landscape before what he called auto-centered suburbanization really suffered as a result of this change. Before this, people were more likely to heat their house with wood, more likely to use animals for jobs that they were doing rather than oil-based machinery. And then we get the really state subsidized change to investing in freeway infrastructure and other road infrastructure that connected a growing landscape of also state subsidized suburban tract homes that existed in a sea of perfectly green lawn.
Right, so you get the idea, again, deeply kind of metaphorical significance that she's seeing here. This one I showed before. This was a student capturing a discussion post where students had totally different interpretations of a character, a historical character in the reading. And she shows those kind of, like parallel, like perspectives on this female historical character. And then to round it out, I wanted to show you, like, so for students who just have not an ounce of artistic talent like me, I tell them, do stick figures, like seriously, do stick figures. This student did, it was a series of multiple images that he recorded on his screen, and students loved it. He was awarded the most humorous presentation award for that semester. And he brought such creativity to it. I mean, there were like deeply significant drawings that he did, and it didn't matter if they were stick figures. So those are just some examples of the active learning technique that I've used. And again, I'm hoping to get even better results this semester, hopefully because I framed it differently for them. All right, I'm gonna turn it back over to Ray.
Thanks for that. And by the way, just for the record, Christina, please get this in the meeting notes. My assignments and activities were just as cool as everything you just saw. Because I'm feeling really anxious about that. Like, I showed you my Canvas welcoming page, and anyways, just want to say that. I'm just joking. Okay, so concluding remarks. One recommendation from this small group of faculty is that we recommend institutionalizing similar training at SBC. Senate, by way of resolution, could support similar training to be mandated for faculty at some point. So for example, if we were to develop some kind of in-house curriculum audit, cultural curriculum audit ourselves with deliverables, we could do this at hiring, at that onboarding process. We could also institutionalize it at curriculum updates, which was one thing I was thinking of when we originally started these discussion, at new course launches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, teaching pedagogy, this is 10+1 overtly. And so I would like to see Senate take this up in some way and have it institutionalized for all departments, divisions, faculty. Long Beach City College is very, generous with their material. We have, Josh is in the position of distance education and coordinator, and Justina right now is as faculty professional development. And so we could charge them with onboarding, SBCC-izing this material. And we don't have to make that decision today, so it can come back for the future. Right now, I think we can end by first of all saying how amazing Josh and Melinda and Tara and Justina are, and opening it up for any questions, comments, or feedback at this time. Robbie?
Excuse me. That was really great. And thank you all for the effort that you put into that and the greatness of your presentation. That was really inspiring. And that's coming from somebody for whom this sort of thing often feels a lot more theoretical than practical, and so isn't very inspiring. So awesome. I think, Ray, I agree about institutionalizing it, and I think maybe the sooner the better, because we're at a point on the campus right now where a lot of people are coming back face to face from a significant time online and rethinking about doing what they do and refitting things back into a face-to-face class. And right now might be a really good time to be exposed to this material.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the model that LBCC uses is, it's typically stipended work. So Dr. Kathy Scott wanted to offer parity for our faculty. She didn't want us to feel left out. So thank you for her. But yeah, I mean, we would want to roll this in, I think, to support faculty in this work, perhaps that way. Not that I'm a grant director and hold those purse strings, but that's one model that we've seen previously. And I agree with you, Robbie. I think as we all return to campus, we're thinking about how do we do things different. I also think that you said something that I think needs to be pointed out as well. you said, usually I think about these things as theoretical. I think that was one of the best parts of this LBCC work was it was a space where we had meetings with other faculty and like talked about stuff and had to produce deliverables to get the stipend attached, not just for showing up and sitting, right? But having these deliverables to share out with you all. And I think, Robbie, especially like you and I as scientists, sometimes it can be like, well, that worked for them, but not us, right? Like, how am I going to do it? And just, I mean, I hope this is okay that I'm sharing this, but as a group, I remember when we were planning this presentation and we were talking about who would do what, Melinda, you shared like, you didn't want to do this one because like you tried it and it like did not work for you. You did not like it. You didn't think it was good. You did not want to do that, right? And so that's why I always come back to this idea of all of this is a menu, but I do think Melinda, like being forced to do that and like giving it a go was like part of that process of like, this is what's working for me in my class and this is what's not. And I think that we would want to do something very similar for our faculty here so that people aren't just like, that won't work for me, or that doesn't work for mine. But that theory to practice, I think, is important. Thanks, Robbie. Other questions, comments, or not concerns? Joy?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that presentation. I thought that you made it very approachable and I appreciated your honesty and experimentation and how it was working with students. I was just wondering, Ray, I agree that this would be good to apply campus-wide. And is there a way that we could work it through professional development? Sometimes stipends, that might get complicated, but if like within 2 years, there would be a prescription that we would all do this through professional development or, I don't know what the timetable would be, but something like that. Could we consider that? And that would have a really widespread effect because we all have to do professional development annually.
Yeah, and that would certainly be a bigger conversation of like, how do we mandate this as part of like a required hours similar to like how we do in-service, right? So I don't know the ins and outs of that, but that's certainly one route that we can take. And I think we could, I don't know it off the top of my head. And that was also part of the onboarding of faculty, like as they come into the campus, get them. And then, whether it's through curriculum updates or your model, yeah, I mean, we can figure this out. It's what we think we want to do. So, Josh.
And just adding to that on professional development, Justina and I were brought in to be part of this LBCC cultural curriculum audit with the intention of trying to adapt this for SBCC. I mean, there's a lot of material here. This was 6 hours worth of training over 3 weeks. And there are some things for which we can say there are a lot of parallel efforts between what we do on this campus and LBCC. That's affirming in itself of the training. But there are also some areas for which things still need to evolve as well. As Melinda had said, again, there are some things in this training for which many of us could say, in practical terms, this didn't work. There were also avenues for faculty debate on this. We debated what our statements about academic dishonesty should look like, being too punitive or being encouraging, a little balance of both. But there were also harder conversations that were also left unresolved as well. A discussion about some of the harder hitting politically charged discussions that some of our faculty have encountered, and for which, yes, there are students, a minority of them, who happen to be agitators in the room. How do we handle that? How do we make sure it is an affirming experience for students at all levels of development, and also in dealing with the fact that sometimes there are those agitators that say things that are incorrigible. How do we deal with that? That discussion was left at the end, and we didn't necessarily resolve that. So there are things for which faculty input on how this should be adapted for our community should be done. And also some of this you will find is what I like to call equity 1.0 still. A lot of this is familiar territory for us. There's also a question about what the next step will be in that one. And there are also different levels of familiarity with Canvas instruction as well, for which we can say there are smaller trainings that can incorporate some of this, and for which we can say appropriate to the level of experience that faculty have. So it's intended to be broken up. And LBCC has legacied a lot of material to us, and they've also invited us to say, add to it to make it part of your own culture.
Trisha, and then I think that we should definitely move on, and we can definitely come back to this at another Senate meeting time for discussion. Trisha?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank all the presenters. That was really interesting. And I want to kind of second what Robbie said about seeing the concrete representation in the different fields was really, really valuable. And I wonder if there is a, if people are willing to have a library, or where if I'm trying to create a lesson, because, like in adult high school, I teach most every subject. So if I'm thinking, like a history, oh, there was a really good, topic, and if I could not copy, but get like inspiration from it. So I wonder, thank you for sharing the slides, Ray Ann, and everybody who created them, but I wonder if that's something we have already, or something that we would want to look at as, examples, library examples of culturally responsive design.
So I think during my Senate president report, I mentioned how Justina is helping me curate pages for different parts for the Academic Senate webpage. This can also be part of that, and which is why I said there will be other areas to explore of curated material for folks. It will need to be an opt-in model, of course, because when you develop class materials, they are your intellectual property, of course. So then there's that whole conversation, but like, obviously it would be an opt-in, and obviously, as I mentioned in my president's report, I'm very interested in creating that repository for faculty for many things. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. And there's an entire page of active learning examples in the modules that were legacies to us from LBCC. Yep. Okay. We'll need to shift gears now to back to our agenda items. I need to open up my agenda myself. .1, which has been an enormous boondoggle for us for so long. And thank you again to Tara for being willing to come to the Senate and give us that presentation on the review of all of the different parts. And so I know that we have a resolution here, and I really wanted us to like move on part of this resolution in this meeting, but I don't think that's going to happen because we only have about 20 minutes left together. So if I could just distill the different parts now and see if there's one area of this conversation that we can like finalize and like put aside. So in my mind, here are the salient features of this topic. And before I do that, I almost forgot. Would anybody like to provide public comment before the Senate talks about item 8.1? Class materials? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, I'm seeing no responses to the call for public comment. So, all right, I'll go back to the introduction to this. Okay, so to me, there's three salient like parts of this that are related, which is how we found ourselves here, but also like can be dealt with separately. And so that's my encouragement of how do we deal with these three things separately, or how do we deal with these things separately? And please correct me if I'm missing a big point. Okay. So there's this concept of inclusive access that is through the bookstore. And I hope that we have clarified any and all points around inclusive access at this point. It's essentially an embedded virtual textbook in the Canvas shell. It is obtained with money through the bookstore. So we have the inclusive access portion of this, to me, which doesn't need Senate input on at this time. It is just one way to obtain class materials through a publisher. And certainly we could, go into further detail around, when are students charged, or how are they charged, and how do they opt in, or developing language even for faculty to use so that it's more overt for students. And then also faculty training around what is inclusive access. Is this what you want? Or do you want to do what Ruth does, which is negotiate with her publisher and get a deal for hardcover books, right? But I think that that's not necessarily a discussion that Senate needs to take up and hammer out. Here's the points that I do think that we need to hammer out. The AAUP says that faculty should not monetarily benefit from the required materials assigned in a course. Right now, we do not have any policy or procedure around that. So do we want to pursue policy and procedure around prohibiting faculty members to benefit monetarily from the required materials in their course? So that is one question and topic, which to me is separate from others. So do professors get to assign books that they wrote and therefore collect royalties on? That's one topic. Another topic, which is important for CAC, and I think the thing that we need to move on and decide today, if we can, is the following. There is this idea of mandatory class fees that get charged at registration. And so there are very specific rules around those. So for instance, in chemistry, we cannot charge students fees for chemicals in the class because they can't take them home and they don't get them and all of that stuff, right? But for instance, in a pottery class, we can charge for the clay, so we do, right? Or in a golf class, we charge for golf club access. Golf clubs? No, that's what you swing with. The place where you go golfing, whatever that is. So there's that. And then we had this new incident, this new idea come forward to CAC, and CAC did not know how to handle it, which is required essentially software for School of Modern Language classes, which were temporarily approved as a required class fee. It was incorrectly named inclusive access. It should have never been named that. And so it's a mandatory class fee. And do we allow, as a Senate, as procedure policy, is that okay that access to class materials with software happens at the curriculum level and not through the bookstore? So to me, those are the three main ideas. Inclusive access, that's just the kind of way we're getting it. Do we allow through policy procedure instructors to benefit from their class materials monetarily? And what direction are we giving to CAC? And what I'd really like to encourage is if somebody has an opinion on the matter, give it now. And then what I would like to do is say, okay, we've been talking about this forever. I feel like everything is out in the open. Like, we all know the details, we all know the players, we've all seen the meeting notes, we've all reviewed all of this. What do you want to do with it? What are we telling CAC? Yes, go for it. Approve such requests at the curriculum level, or no, do not do that, and then we'll develop more specific language and policy around it. Ruth.
I do think on the first point that we do need to set policy on that, and that's certainly never going to happen here at these particular meetings, so we'll need to send that out. But we do need to have policy on, the assigning of it is a non-issue, but it's the profiting off of our students that's an issue. So yes, I say yes, we need policy. And in terms of what CAC should do, for a few different reasons, which I voiced before, I do not think that something like a software program should go through CAC. One of them being, like I said, potential impact on the student in the future with their financial status. And another being that it shouldn't be like course-wide, right? Could be another faculty member that comes in and they certainly have the academic freedom to use something else, and so that they're not under further pressure from, say, a chair to adopt a particular program. So those are my recommendations at this stage.
Okay, and I would really like to handle them separately. So we have 2 separate issues and 2 recommendations. One, let's create procedure and policy around not allowing faculty to obtain money through the bookstore or other way, like whatever, just get paid for the materials they assign, even if they are the author. And the other issue is not allowing these software requests to be rolled into mandatory course fees and giving better directions around that to CAC. So those are the 2 prevailing points. So we've heard that. And so I'd like to take one or the other and finalize one of them and get the Senate's temperature on it. Like, one or the other, what are we doing? What do you like? Don't need to amplify and augment on what people said before, and just move forward with something. Russell.
All right, so I'm going to argue counter to one point. If you author the textbook, you teach the class, you assign the text, they buy it at Amazon, the bookstore, whatever, they should get compensated for their work. That said, it should not and cannot be a materials fee, right? It has to be a book you would buy any other way in the classroom, just like any other. So I see those as separate issues. So for me, I would push for, yes, you wrote it, you should profit from it, and you should be able to teach in your class. However, I would recommend to CAC that it should not be listed as a materials fee, but clearly as a textbook fee. So those would be the 2 things, and those would be the points I would argue. Thank you.
So it seems like I've heard from 2 people that agree that such class material fees should not be recommended to be approved at the CAC level. So we heard that twice. And then we heard counter arguments about the textbook, who profits. So we've heard both of those, and I'm seeing hands up, and I just really want to make sure that we get like to an ending point with this. So Anna and then Ellen.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, because I could see the profit discussion being much lengthier possibly, if we could just focus for now on the CAC guidance, which I think in previous discussions has been pretty much everybody on board, even with the 2 previous speakers, and I third that. So I'm just wondering if we can, for right now, considering time frame, we can focus on CAC rec and materials fees, and then unfortunately return to the other piece.
That sounds good to me. And I really feel like we can debate all day about royalties and who gets them and why. So yeah, I think that that is definitely like the boondoggle, and we definitely don't want to move too swiftly around that. And then, yeah. So yeah, if we can come to some formal recommendation for CAC, that would be really great. Ellen?
Okay, quickly, I do want to say that I don't want to open discussion about this now, but just to flag it for the future, I do think Senate still has an important role in the bookstore's inclusive access, and how the way it's charged affects students. So I just want to put that out there for the future. But right now, I would love to make a motion that Senate, you know, I'm not sure how to phrase it, direct CDC to no longer approve those, or recommend that CAC no longer approve those materials fees for things like software or other course materials that are textbooks, whatever, what Ruth said.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for Senate to formally recommend to CAC in their curriculum approval process.
I would second it.
Okay, Russell's seconding it. So the motion that he's seconding is a recommendation to CAC from the Academic Senate to not allow course material fees for class content to be included in the curriculum approval process.
Yes, thank you for articulating that for me.
So we have a motion made by Ellen Carey, and I heard Russell seconding that. So this opens up for discussion on the motion. Ruth?
Hi, yeah, just a quick question maybe for Tara, if she thinks we're missing anything before we move on. Like an improved definition or anything like that?
Yeah, I will just clarify too that currently what was approved as a materials fee today would be called inclusive access if it was just through the bookstore. So we kind of have one set of rules for the School of Modern Languages charging what is actually is inclusive access in any other department. And I think, you know, now that that program has been developed at the bookstore, it no longer makes sense to have a digital textbook count as a materials fee, because we have inclusive access for that.
Does that clarify? Okay.
What can I do, Jenny?
Well, that clarifies that. I just wonder in terms of what Senate recommends, like if we're going to make, you know, our recommendation too narrow because we didn't include XYZ thing that might come up in the future. You know, because who knows what kinds of things people will ask for in the future and say, oh, but that didn't fall under what Senate recommended. So I wonder if we need to outline what these things are, or just say CAC is empowered to determine it, or what? Ray's saying no. Okay.
None of that.
Okay.
Well, I would just clarify that we as a district can decide whether or not a material course, a digital course content constitutes a materials fee. That's in our power to decide.
Oh, good. Okay.
We say
So that's where we're at now.
Great.
And as things come up in the future, we will deal with them as they come. But I can't imagine.
That, yeah, that definition's there, so that's great. Okay.
Robin?
Yeah, so obviously, because I represent the School of Modern Languages within my division, I'm sure they have expressed concern about this and it will continue to. So my question is, my understanding was that they have been directed and intend in the future to move their materials fee to the bookstore. Am I not understanding that correctly? I believe they were directed to, correct?
Well, they may have been. it's my understanding that it's come back to CAC again. And regardless of what they are being directed to do, CAC had approved this, and so it set a precedent. And so I think that we need a formal process recommendation from Senate to a CAC to say, this is what you're going to do with these fees in the future as they come in.
Got it. So then is it correct that under this motion, then departments like School of Modern Languages that are handling this through a materials fee could move it to the bookstore, and then they would be able to continue charging for the materials just in a different way as a textbook, correct?
That we have, so that's why I tried to pull apart the two ideas.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to parse out here.
Yep.
So this would address the materials fee, but then we would need to still look at the bigger issue. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to clarify so that I can explain to my division what's being voted on.
Yes, yes, and yes, they have been directed to put it at the bookstore.
Got it.
So my
Thanks.
understanding is that there has been resistance to that, and it's my understanding that the request through curriculum has been occurred again. Maybe it's been pulled back, but at one point it was there, and so curriculum has asked us to deal with this and give them direction.
Okay.
Manzana Learning will still collect money. It just won't be through the curriculum process. It will now be through the bookstore. We have not dealt with instructors assigning mandatory materials and then profiting from it. That is a different discussion.
That will be helpful for me to take back. Thanks.
Tara?
Yeah, I just want to again clarify too, this resolution in no way inhibits an instructor's decision on what course materials they want to use. All right, so the School of Modern Languages can continue using their content. The only thing that we're suggesting, which is student-centered, is how students pay for it. And so for all the reasons we talked about at Senate a few weeks ago, the resolution is trying to make it easier, more consistent, in line with book grants and everything else for how students pay for it. The other boondoggle we haven't dealt with, so that's in the future.
So I would like to invoke an Elmo, which is enough. Let's move on. Let's vote. Let's do this.
My statement has to do with voting.
What?
My statement has to do with voting.
Okay.
I think if there's, and I'm not saying that there is, but if there is a senator here who in any way profits from this, I think you should recuse yourself from this vote because this decision could potentially impact you.
Actually, there is a state law that requires you to, because we are a Brown Act body. And you cannot vote on things that directly, that you benefit from monetarily. So not only should you ethically, but California state law says that you should.
Right, and I think it's the California Political Reform Act.
I don't know. But thank you, Ruth. Okay, so your votes are yes, no, or abstention. Please remember that if you need to, you should vote no. It's okay to disagree with an emotion or a move of the Senate. That is a good thing to do. Okay, so we will do a roll call vote. Senator Benjamin Reyes.
Yes.
Counselor Jen,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Dee Dee,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Russell. Trisha,
Sorry, my unmute wasn't working. Yes.
it's okay. I always feel like I give you just long enough and then never quite enough.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. Trisha
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
That was a unanimous vote on giving very clear directions to CAC on how to handle these requests at the curriculum level. Suspect Tara has what she needs now. So thank you all for participating in that. We'll deal with the other thing later. And for now, let's all get out of here and enjoy our Wednesday nights. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.